All right, you guys, welcome back to the podcast. I'm really excited because today I have my friend and fellow coach, Elena, here on the podcast with us. Woo!
Hey.
So excited she's here. We just kind of give like a general overview. We're going to be talking about, the types of clients that Elena typically works with. She's a functional health coach, and also really how to know if you are potentially dealing with a functional health issue and kind of some of those red flags or signs that you should maybe dig a little bit deeper, get some blood work done, things like that. And then looking at the kind of most common issues that women particularly deal with in the functional health space, kind of just give you a broad overview and just kind of start to, again, I think it's really important to just really learn a lot about our bodies. And just the more you know about your body, the more you can kind of be like, all right, you can advocate for yourself with your doctor and things like that. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. Elena, welcome. So happy that you're here.
Hey, I'm so excited to be here. I love doing podcasts, so this is great.
Yeah, I love to
And
talk.
really excited to chat with everybody today. I love this. You approached me and you were like, I just want to talk about like what are the big red flags? And I'm like, hold my beer.
Mhm.
Like,
My dear.
hold my
Hmm.
beer. Because there could be a lot of them. And I love that you said people just need to learn more about what's going on with their body. That's 90% of what, and I'm sure that you've seen it too, like 90% of what people come to us with, whether they have high level issues or even just kind of low level underlying things that have started to kind of creep up, is that people just don't know how to listen to their body. Our bodies say so much. They're always talking, and we just are like ignoring them flat
Hmm.
out.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes for good reason because we're like just trying to get through the day, or maybe we're like, you're feeling exhausted. Well, I gotta work and I got kids, and so I'm gonna have more caffeine because I have to do these things. But it's and I think it's also normalized in our society, and so everyone else is doing it, so why not? But I think is if we're able to learn about our bodies and then translate that into again advocating for when we're at our doctor and they're like, well, I know you've been experiencing this, that, and the other, but your labs are normal. And you're like, well, I really don't feel normal. So can we try do some root cause analysis, figure out what's going on? And if you're not able to get those answers there, then, potentially being able to reach out and seek help elsewhere. But if you don't know what's going on in the first place or don't know there may be a potential issue, then that's kind of the first step. So I love to kind of just talk a little, like, kind of briefly about how you got started in this space. I think we all kind of have a story of where we started and where we're at now. So if you want to just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and
yeah.
what you do and how you kind of got to doing that.
Yeah. So, definitely was the person that had a lot of issues back in the day. Sort of the TLDR as I got into the world of fitness and bodybuilding at the, ripe old age of like 18, 19 years old. And kind of got into, the bodybuilding.com trend. This was in like the early 2000 or late 2000s, early 2010. So if the IFYM era, the very bro, like it was just it was kind of a golden era to a degree because I feel like a lot of us learned a lot during that time of our life, but at the same time so much of it was just like so messed up.
Mhm.
And for me, my particular journey started really when I was very young. I was diagnosed with endometriosis finally at the age of like 28 or 29, but I had suffered with it for 14 years. It took 14 years to get a diagnosis. And prior to that diagnosis, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis. So here I was, this little baby bodybuilder, not realizing that I had these underlying issues, having been told, yeah, you kind of have some thyroid issues, like things are a little bit low. Let's put you on some medication. By the way, you have high cholesterol. I was like, I was 130 pounds and 5'7" at 23 years old, and they were telling me I have high cholesterol. I'm like, huh? What?
Doesn't add up.
Something the math ain't mathing. You're right. It's like the math ain't mathing, but I didn't know. I didn't know there weren't coaches that focused on hormones and metabolism, and doctors were only mildly helpful at the time that I was seeing a naturopath.
Mhm.
But oh my God, it was so expensive. It was like $400 for one appointment. And it was here's a medicine, see you later. And by the way, your insurance doesn't cover it. And fast forward to a few years later, sort of my wake up call was I fell asleep at the wheel on the freeway. and crashed my car.
Yes.
And luckily it was not a super serious incident. The vehicle that I ran into, I kind of wasn't, it was during traffic, so I wasn't going terribly too fast, but still crashing into somebody at like 35 miles an hour is still frightening. And thank God nobody got hurt. But I was like, something is wrong. Something is seriously wrong. I am 23 years old. I exercise. I eat right. Like I was tracking my macros. I was eating all my protein. I was going and getting my workouts in the gym. I was doing everything quote unquote right. And I still felt awful. Well, turns out that I had autoimmune disease and I had no idea. You know what I mean? I didn't know. And then the stress of trying to kind of beat my body into submission to pursue a physique goal, plus the high stress of, at the time I was a teacher, working 10 to 12 hours a day, just trying to do everything and anything every single day, just like basically led me to like burnout, getting really, really sick. And that was very, very difficult to deal with. And when I originally got diagnosed with the Hashimoto's, I was working with a coach. He is a brilliant macro coach. He is an industry leader at the time. I don't think he's in the industry anymore. At least I haven't seen him around in a few years, really since the pandemic, unfortunately. But he was like, I have no idea what to do with it. So I was like, solid.
Nice.
So let me just go down the rabbit hole of Google and kind of had to give myself the crash course of how do I get my gut under control? How do I get my thyroid under control? How do I start to reduce the antibodies? Because I cannot live like this. I cannot live. This is horrible. Oh, it's terrible.
What made you start going down that rabbit hole? Because I know that there's so many people who would also be like, okay, well, I'm diagnosed with Hashimoto's. I have this, that, and the other. And again, you're working with a doctor, let alone you're working with a naturopath. There's still something in your brain that was like, traditional medicine is not it for me at this moment. So you're going to see the naturopath. But then what made you think like even more, you were just like, I need to figure this out on my own and do more research. And besides just like accepting, okay, I have Hashimoto's, this is the way I'm going to feel, and this is the medication I have to take, and that's the way it's going to be. Like, what made you think, no, there's got to be a better way?
I was just looking at myself going, you are so young.
Yeah.
Is this really what the rest of my life is going to be like? And that terrified me more than that. This was my reality. Like I've barely begun to live. Like,
yeah,
this is not acceptable. There was just this internal visceral reaction to this being my reality. And I knew that I had to find answers. And so for the next few years, I go down the rabbit hole. I mean, I tried everything, finally figured out some things along the way. And then, I had working with a coach and I was working under another coach within their business for a while. And finally kind of got to the point where I got better. Got to the point where I was able to reduce some of my medication through a lot of lifestyle dietary changes and a lot of elimination diets, a lot of work on my gut health. My endometriosis is still an issue. So I was still kind of on and off birth control, which wasn't helping things either. And that's like a whole other podcast episode.
For sure.
But I eventually figured it out and finally did find a coach in the fitness space who knew something about hormones and labs and was willing to look at more than and I remember the coach, his name is Mark Dominic. He was kind of one of the first coaches to really get into hormones, and start to educate people more and start to learn more about how our hormones and our inflammation and gut health impact our metabolism in pursuit of goals and improving energy and things like that. And I decided I want to do this. This is what I want to do with my life. Because at the time too, it was now 2020, so not very long ago, I feel like. So it took me probably 4 or 5 years to get my own shit together. And then, which was longer than it should have taken, but I just didn't know who to talk to. There wasn't people that did what I do, 5, 6 years ago. At least it wasn't very well known. Right. And said, I'm going to do this. This is what I want to do. And I knew that if I ever got into coaching, I wanted to focus on hormones and holistic health and gut health because that was such an important journey for me. And there's so much noise out there online. And if I could help even just one person find relief and find solutions and know that they're not stuck in their body feeling like this, that it would be worth making that difference. And that's how I ended up now coaching. And now I coach full time. I also mentor other coaches. it's been such a such a humbling journey, you know, to see people realize that they don't have to be trapped in their body the way that it is.
Yeah.
It's incredible to watch that trend. And so I'm so happy that I eventually made that decision, as I knew I was going to be losing my teaching job. It was the pandemic, music, they were going to cut my program. I was like, well, what do? I don't want to work for somebody else. So I guess I'm going to just do this. And I had a little bit of industry insight. I knew that it could be done. I knew that it could be a viable career path. So I just
Went for it.
4 years later.
We are 4 years later. I know we say like, oh, the pandemic doesn't seem like it was that long ago. Like to me, it still feels like yesterday that we were just like all locked up in our houses and wearing masks. So like reality, that was like when we like found out all this stuff was coming out, it was like almost 5 years ago. Crazy.
It was like October 2019 when like the first cases of COVID started getting reported. And
Yeah.
March 2020 when
Yeah.
it's been
It's
almost
wild.
going on 5 years.
But well, thank you for sharing this. I mean, I think fortunately now, because of the way social media is, I'm sure we see more of this because we are like in the health and fitness space. But it seems like in general, people are becoming more aware of it's not just calories in, calories out, and not to discredit the importance of a caloric deficit, because I think that there's extremes to these arguments for sure. But I think people in general are becoming more aware. Like it's so much more than if it fits your macros. It's so much more like quality food is so important. And it's kind of it's difficult that a lot of these things are coming about because we have people like standing in grocery aisles and telling you can't eat this and you can't eat that because they're taking that extremist version. But I think it's starting to wake people up and getting them to realize, you know what, I do feel this way. Maybe maybe I don't have to. Maybe I can seek out, somebody who really knows about this and who like read my blood work and help me. I had somebody message me, like I was posting about one of my clients. I was reviewing her blood work, and somebody messaged me and she was like, I didn't know you could do this. Are you a doctor? Are you an MD? Are you supervised by an MD? And I was like, no, like I am trained on reading blood work and interpreting it and creating a lifestyle and nutrition protocols for people. And to be honest with you, doctors don't do that. Like
They don't do it. Somebody tried to pick a fight with me on Thread.
Oh yeah.
I said something like, I posted a question because I wanted to see kind of like what the opinion is on like pulling blood work before, after birth control, things like that. What are people's takes on it? What are their opinions? Because everybody's got a different method of doing things. And somebody came in and was like, what qualifications and licensure and training do you have in order to be able to order and review a blood work? And I'm just like, I mean, I have a bunch of certifications and I've taken a lot of classes on it and I've learned a lot about it. I'm not a doctor. We're not diagnosing people with a disease via their blood work, not even by a long shot.
Right.
But it doesn't take a doctor certification or whatever it is that you do to become a doctor, not knocking doctors by any stretch of the imagination. But if Western medicine didn't screw the pooch, we wouldn't have to stick our noses in it.
Fair.
Like literally, like if doctors were able to be trained in a way that they looked at the whole system all together, right? Looked at how the lifestyle choices are impacting the internal physiology of a person, how that internal physiology is in turn affecting their metabolic adaptation, then we wouldn't have to fucking stick our noses. Like that's all I'm saying. And I'm never going to diagnose a person via blood work. I know my scope of practice. Right. I will always tell my clients, and I always tell even my mentees, there's things that we can look at, there's trends that we can spot that tell us what about their lifestyle is impacting something in the most severe way, that help us kind of walk backwards, figure out what is the primary system that is being impacted and working from the ground up, right? That root cause analysis that you mentioned earlier. And then we say, hey, take this to your doctor, go have a checkup, put it on file. Tell them exactly what we're doing. And every time I've had a client take something that we're doing to their doctor and the doctor is like, this is incredible. Keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
I've never had a client's doctor try to argue with what we're doing. And I even work alongside some MDs. I work with their patients because they know that they don't have the time and the energy and the space to support their patients with the lifestyle changes that they needed. And I love that. And guess what? They have no problem with me looking at their patient's lab work.
Right. Right. Because and that's the thing is like, we could get into a huge discussion about this is
I
like,
know.
it's not, it's hard to put blame. And I know that a lot of people, oh, we could blame this system or, we could blame whatever. But at the end of the day, it's just doctors aren't trained on it and they don't have the time or really the resources to sit with patients for 30 minutes, an hour, review your what their blood work, talk about their lifestyle, their diet. Like they just truly don't have the time and resources to be able to do that, to really get to know you and work with you on that level, right? Which is why they are so happy when someone comes in and is like, hey, I hired a coach. We're working on this. Like, can you look at my blood work and let me know, like, with these things, is there anything else we need to investigate, like on a medical level? You know what I mean? But they're like, I'm so happy that you're taking your health into your own hands so that in like 10 years, I don't have to slap 10 different medications on you. You know what I mean? So I think doctors appreciate that there is someone to kind of come in there and fill the gap, and I think that it's all about knowing as an individual, do you want to spend that time and investment on filling that gap so that you're not having to kind of pedal backwards like 10, 15, 20 years later when
Yeah,
you're
it's much harder to walk backwards than it is to be proactive.
yeah.
And you're exactly right. Doctors want people to do more with their lifestyle, but they just don't have the capacity to do it. And so it's just so funny when like a medical professional comes in and wants to try to pick a fight with me. And I'm like, I'm literally just trying to help people feel better. I'm not telling them not to go to the doctor. I'm not telling them to ditch all their medications. We're looking at their whole life. And then when it comes to medical advocacy, that's a learned skill.
Mhm.
That's not, and I work with a lot of my clients on medical advocacy because I've been through it myself and I've had the opportunity to talk to several doctors about why certain things are certain ways and what are the things that we can say to help maybe move the needle a little bit more when medical intervention is appropriate. I have almost every single one of my clients has a chronic or autoimmune diagnosis. We are working with their doctor a lot. It's a team effort to get this person to feel better. It is not just one person's job. Everybody, it is all hands on deck. And it's just so funny when somebody's like, well, what qualifies you to do this? And I'm like, go ask the 200 women that I've worked with.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe they have something to say about it. I don't have time for this argument.
Yeah. I know. Legitimately, like I do not have time for this. I love
I
it.
don't have time for this.
So, you mentioned all the women you work with, and I know you primarily work with women who have like autoimmune conditions and things like that. So, from your perspective, what do you think are some of the biggest, like when someone comes to you and they're like, I'm experiencing this, and that, and you're like, okay, we need to figure out what's going on. What are typically some of those biggest, red flags that people are experiencing that might tell them, hey, something's going on, we need to dig a little bit deeper?
Gut health is one of the first things that I ask people about. Because they might be feeling fatigued, they might be having PMS, they might be having mood swings, they might be having weird energy crashes, where they're maybe fine one day and then the next day they just feel like a complete sloth. Um, their gut health is usually one of the things that I ask about. They'll give me this laundry list of things they're dealing with, and then I'm like, how's your digestion? And they're like, oh God. I'm like, that's what I thought. And so looking to your digestive system is going to be sort of one of your first lines of defense for really anything. When we look at whether it's sex hormone issues, whether it's adrenal issues, whether it's thyroid issues, it's all going to be impacted by the gut. So if you have a lot of consistent issues that maybe they're not leading to something worse yet, but they eventually will. Like it's not an if, the when.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're constantly bloated, if you're constantly struggling to have regular bowel movements, you're straining to poop, you're not pooping every day, you get a lot of acid reflux, things like that have been so normalized. Like if I see another person posting an AM PM bloating picture and going, this is normal, I swear I'm going to reach into my phone and I'm going to take that woman by the face and go, this is not normal. Stop telling people this is normal. Like, yeah, your stomach is going to look different as the day goes on when you eat, blah, 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 whatever. But you should not go from looking totally flat to 6 months pregnant in a span of 4 hours or 6
Absolutely
hours
not.
or 8 hours. Like, that is absolutely not normal.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
even a little bit. So
Yeah.
the gut stuff is the first. So if there's anything happening with any regularity that you're always going, oh, why is this happening? Oh, why do I feel like this? Oh, I'm so bloated. You need to like pause for a second and just ask yourself, what am I doing in my life? Am I negatively impacting?
Yeah. So, and then going a little bit deeper on that. So if you're experiencing, well, actually first, let me ask you this. What are your thoughts on IBS diagnosis? Heard it here first. She said it's a bunch of bullshit.
Did I say that out loud? Oops. Here's the thing is it slapped the label on something and there is medication for it, but it's not actually a disease. It's a it's a subset of symptoms that somebody experiences. And if they fall under any of these symptoms occurring with any regularity, guess what? The FDA has an approved drug for that, and your doctor's probably going to.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, I think people, and again, this is more about, okay, the more you know, right? Because a syndrome, any type of syndrome is just a collection of symptoms. That's all it is. So it's not a disease. It's not something that it's just because we can't figure out exactly what's causing this. And we have these symptoms and we're like, let's just put them together and then under this umbrella, call it a syndrome. That way we can diagnose you and give you a medication that's prescribed.
Yeah. And
Or
sometimes that diagnosis can be beneficial because sometimes doctors do need the actual diagnosis to code for further testing or ordering things like stool tests or what have you, or additional blood work. And sometimes the diagnosis can be a key to getting some of that further testing. But the majority of people that have IBS symptoms don't need additional, like they need lifestyle and nutrition.
Mhm.
That fixes that fixes pretty much everything.
Yeah, yeah. So what would you say if someone's having these digestive issues and we've already like a lot of this I'm sure could be fixed by looking at their nutrition, their fiber intake, right? So like most people are not getting enough dietary fiber, drinking water, moving around, stress management, things like that. But going beyond that, it's like if you've been able to, clean up your diet, you're eating mostly whole foods, you're eating plenty of fiber, drinking your water, doing all those things that we just talked about, but you're still having these issues. It's like, what's the next step to figure out what might be going on? Because you're like, I've done all the things I'm quote unquote supposed to be doing. Like, now what?
If somebody's checking all the boxes and they're doing it consistently, there's a couple things that we want to look at. One, we want to take a look at what are the food types 3. So there's a lot of common food triggers, and this is where we start talking, the big scary word, elimination diet.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that bad. And there's various stages to which you can kind of try to eliminate. Nightshades is a group of foods that are pretty typically irritating to people who have high intestinal permeability or leaky gut, which is very commonly associated with IBS. Again, leaky gut is not a diagnosis, it's a colloquial term for the lining of your intestine is compromised. It's letting things in that it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And so nightshades is a big one. For a lot of people, gluten can be a big one. And that's not to say that you have to stay gluten-free forever. The reality is that if we take something out, we usually have to take something out, bring it back and retest it and see if it causes any irritation. But we have to remove the things that are irritating you in order to allow your body to.
Mm-hmm.
Then we also have to look at what are the choices that you made that got you to this. Because the lifestyle changes that you shifted then have to stay in place in order to avoid this being an issue again. And sometimes supplementation can be brought in here to kind of help speed up the process, but it's very dependent on the individual. I don't like to kind of blanket recommend supplementation because it's just so case by case. But try just taking a few things out for 2 to 3 weeks at a time, bring a little serving of it back in, and then see how you feel over the next day. And if it bugs you, I would say keep it out for the next 10 to 12 weeks and just kind of retest it every 3 to 4 months until you figure out, okay, yes, I can either continue eating this thing or it's still bugging me. Now, if everything you eat bothers you, that's when you have to hire a coach.
Mm-hmm.
You got to start working with somebody who can take a bigger look at it and speed up this process of trial and error, because I'm just going to lay this out right now. Google's not going to help you here, and you're not going to be able to get it done by yourself. There's a certain skill set and knowledge base that individuals like myself have, and yes, I am absolutely tooting my own horn here, that help walk people through this process so they don't have to do it again. Now, if we do some kind of elimination and then people are still having problems, that is when we start talking about additional testing, specifically referring to doing like a GI map. And
Yeah.
that would tell us if we're dealing with something more advanced, like is there parasite? Is there specific, like, is it H. pylori? Like, what are we actually dealing with here that is going to require a more advanced, but again, you're not going to figure that out on your own. And if you do a stool test through a doctor, they're usually going to give you an antibiotic to whatever bacterial or overgrowth or parasite is present, which doesn't always fix the symptom. It might kill off the bacteria, but it doesn't take away the symptoms because, again, an antibiotic, again, is going to cause another disruption to the microbiome.
Right.
Although that's not to say that it's not an appropriate strategy for some individuals. Some individuals that might be the right move. But I've seen people get treated for things like SIBO or whatever with an antibiotic, and they still have problems.
That's so frustrating. Like,
So frustrating.
because you're like, okay, I think I finally found the answer. I'm getting on this antibiotic. And then you like feel the same or feel worse. And you're like, I don't understand, and that's hard. Especially with gut health. I had one of my friends on a little bit ago who's been struggling with a gut health thing, working with a coach. For her, it's been a long process. And I think that's something that's important for people to understand is like, there's going to be progress and there's going to be times where you regress, right? And, there's going to be different things that cause different flare-ups. And it's, you have to kind of continue working, especially if it is something more serious, right? Like SIBO and that kind of thing. But
it can realistically take, if somebody's super adherent to the process from day one, 6 months to a year to fully get things under.
Yeah. What would you say? Because I know as coaches, one of the hardest conversations for us to have with clients is like that we have to restrict things, because I think especially like the world where you and I came from, like if it's your macros and things like that. The good thing about that was like, look, you can have the things that you want as long as they're, within your macros, right? So we don't have to restrict too much. If you like ice cream, if you like this, you can include those things. And as coaches, we like to teach people to have a healthy relationship with food. And so one of, I think, the harder discussions to have is like when we're dealing with these issues, having to tell a client, listen, it would be very beneficial for you and potentially necessary for you to cut out these certain things, let's say alcohol, let's say gluten, whatever it is, for a period of time. And so that's a difficult conversation. And so one thing I've heard occasionally from a few of my clients when approaching the gluten conversation is like, well, I've been tested for celiac and it wasn't positive. So what would you say to that?
You don't have celiac. That doesn't
Don't have celiac.
It's not bothering you.
Exactly. Yeah.
The thing is that, and I think that we've talked about this before, and we've heard other coaches come into our professional spaces and share the same exact information, that gluten does compromise the intestinal lining when, not always, when you already are somebody who has been battering and beating your body with low nutrients, high stress, or sleep for several years or months. You know what I mean? So gluten, there's an enzyme within gluten that loosens the lining of the junctures of the intestinal lining. And so that's what causes that additional permeability. It's not that you're allergic to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's that it's just literally having a physiological impact on your innards. And eventually you will be able to bring it back in. But in order to make it so that it doesn't bother you, it has to go out for a little while. And it's kind of the conversation of, we can do this, but you won't see the results that you want unless we do that. If we need to, adjust and maybe not go take out everything all at once, which I don't usually recommend. So if we're doing like a full-on elimination protocol, I don't usually take things out right away because that can actually make things. So you think about all the things that you normally feed your microbiome. If you take everything out at once, that's going to cause. So you kind of slow roll into it. But alcohol is a big one that people also just don't want to give up. And I have a very kind of firm opinion about alcohol. And this is coming from a self-proclaimed wino. I love wine. I love wine tasting. Mm-hmm. But in order to obtain health, you really have to not drink for probably like 4 to 6.
Yeah.
And then in order to maintain health, you really can't have more than 1 or 2 drinks
a month.
People don't like that. very, very emotionally attached to their emotional support beverages.
Yes. The emotional support beverages. And I get it because I'm not somebody who is alcohol free. Um, and again, we talk about we're not trying to restrict, we're trying to make sure you're in optimal health. And it's like if you are on this journey and you are going backwards every Monday because we drank 5, 6, 8 drinks on the weekend, that's something we have to evaluate. And as coaches, we're not going to be like, take out, we're not going to be like, you have to do this. We can give recommendations and say, I think this would be highly beneficial for you because X, Y, Z, right? But ultimately, it has to be the person who makes that decision of like, you know what? I am not feeling my best. Actually, I feel like crap right now. And if removing these things for a period of time or significantly cutting back is going to help me regain my health, then I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
But
90% of the time, people finally do it and they get over that hump and they're like, oh my God, I can't imagine that.
right. Yeah. So we talked about like, okay, biggest red flag, digestion. Like if you have issues with your digestion, if you're like going way too much or you're not going, like if you're not going every day or you only go every couple of days, that's a huge red flag. What are some other big things? I know you had mentioned like just kind of fatigue and things like that. So what are some other big things that you see from women?
So other big things is obviously like skin and hair issues. Okay, that can be related to gut health, that can be related to thyroid, that can be related to adrenal issues. So like thinning hair, dry skin, patchy skin, breakout. PMS is a big one. I always tell people your period doesn't have to suck. Again, this is coming from somebody. I have a reproductive chronic illness that can make my periods absolutely hellish, but not every single one of my periods suck, which for somebody who has endometriosis is quite the big flex. But for the average woman who doesn't have a chronic reproductive illness like endometriosis or PCOS, they don't have fibroids, no adenomyosis, things like that, you don't have to have a shitty period. You don't. And if you do, that's likely a sign that there's some kind of imbalance going on internally. And what drives me up a wall is that people will go to the doctor because they have horrible PMS or mood swings and they get given birth control to balance their hormones. But birth control doesn't balance your hormone production. It actually suppresses your hormone production, which could cause even more problems. And so that's again, that birth control conversation is like a whole other topic. But so people who have high swings in PMS, mood swings are a huge one. Anxiety, especially in that late luteal phase leading up to your period that week 4. And then the other thing would be like energy. So like we typically reference, I think as coaches, kind of like bring people's attention to this, like how time 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, are you reaching for a Diet Coke every day? Going to fill up another cup of coffee? Like how much caffeine are you consuming daily in order to stay awake? And then you're not able to fall asleep at night.
Right.
So those types of things is usually a sign that something bigger is at play, because what people don't realize, because we're not, is that our bodies will adapt to what we throw at it. They will try to compensate as much as they can until they can't. And then when you start feeling these things, that's when your body is now no longer able to effectively compensate internally, and you're going to start feeling it. Yep. And that means that there's been something probably going on for 6 months plus.
Yeah.
With that. By the time usually people come to work with you.
Yeah. And it starts going downhill fast because your body was trying to keep up, and I can speak to this just going through a lot of adrenal stuff last year. It's like you're running on adrenaline and fight or flight for so long that you either don't realize how bad you feel or your body's just like it's overcompensating. So it's like we have to get you through like these stressful times, right? Like we have to get you through. And then once you're through it, or maybe just once your body's like, yeah, we can't really do this anymore, it's like it all comes crashing down and you're like, why do I all of the sudden feel so awful? And then you realize it's not really all of a sudden, it's because all these compounding effects from 6 months to a year, or maybe even, 5 years, 10 years, like all of these compounding things are finally just coming to a head and your body just can't do it anymore. And that's when we have to explain to people it's because most people, and I don't know about your clients, probably a little bit different than my clients, but most people are wanting when they sign up to work with a coach, 99% of the time it's for fat loss, right? Body recomposition. They want to lose weight. They want to look better. They want to feel better. They do want to feel better, but that always usually comes second to looking better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, we got to flip that. Like, you got to feel better before you look better. Because and I know you talk really about like a health focused approach. Like, we can't just focus on fat loss and the scale. Like, you have to focus on your health. If you're doing these things, the fat loss of body composition will follow. It will come. Um, but when we're focused on that, we're not able to accurately address everything else because we're so focused on that number on the scale that we just can't think of anything else sometimes.
And this goes along with sort of another tenet of mine is that fat loss or weight loss is not a health strategy. There's a subset of people where a calorie deficit and weight loss really is necessary. And where a calorie deficit in their situation is going to be a positive stressor on the body in order to help bring down inflammation and start seeing activity kind of coming back online. But for a lot of people, like, let's just paint the picture of an average woman, 35 to 42, somewhere in there, maybe, or 32 to 42. Let's just say someone in their 30s to 40s. And you're probably 20 to 40 pounds heavier than maybe what you want to be. And you've been trying to diet to lose weight, to do fat loss on and off for years. And you've maybe kind of toyed around with the same 5, 10, 15 pounds on and off, on and off, on and off. You can never seem to keep it off. And then all of a sudden, after 5 to 7 years of you trying to lose that 5, 10, 15, whatever pounds it is, you start gaining more. And now you're 30 to 40 pounds heavier than what you really want to be and wondering what it is that you did wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just that you probably push your body to a point where it's not going to respond to a calorie deficit because you've beaten it into submission or attempted to beat it into submission so often that the only thing you focused on was being in a smaller body.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not going to get you into a smaller body.
Right.
For example, let's take me for example really fast. I posted a picture on my Instagram the other day of me when I competed 5 years ago. And I was like, because I feel fantastic right now in my current body. I feel like great. I feel lean. I feel strong. And I was like, I wonder what I look like in my suit. Like, I just want to try it on.
Just curious.
Whipped up my suit, whipped up my heels.
I'm surprised you still have it.
I know, me too. I was like, wait, where is it? I'm like at the bottom of a drawer. I posted a picture, and this goes back to kind of how you talked about the number on the scale, right? I asked the poll, I said, how much weight difference is between these two photos? And it was a photo of me on the day that I competed, so the leanest that I was, the smallest that I was, to now where I'm currently at in my current. And the majority of people thought I was maybe only 10 pounds heavier. I was 25 pounds heavier in the photo today than I was in the photo from 5 years ago. And people were absolutely shocked that I was 25 pounds heavier than the lean photo where I was, it's 130 pounds to 155 pounds. That's not a small amount of weight.
Yeah.
But the difference is that you're not focused on the number on the scale. You're focused on how you feel and how you're taking care of your body. And people are like, oh my God, this is great. And I'm like, I literally just ate food and lifted weight for 5 years, with maybe one bout in there of 4 to 6 months where I really struggled with my anxiety and depression. And I did gain about 15 pounds from that, which I've subsequently lost. But it blows people's minds. They're like, and no, I didn't diet, aka diet in the sense of trying to be in a smaller body for 5 years.
Yeah.
To get to where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
And that shook people so hard. I can't wait to actually do like a post about it because people were just mind blown. Even you guessed wrong.
I did.
You did.
I was like, I don't know, because, body composition, I was like, one of those things where it looks like you lost a lot more, but because body composition changes, and I was like, I guess like 10, 15 pounds. No, I was wrong.
Whopping 25 pounds. But that's the difference between taking an approach to your fitness and your health journey that's focused on the number on the scale versus how you feel internally.
1000%. Yeah.
That's the difference.
Mm-hmm. And I think if there's one thing people can take from this podcast, it's, whether you're doing it on your own or you're signing up to work with a coach, going into it having the expectation that you should never, when you're trying to lose weight, I'm assuming you've been chronically dieting for a long time because most people have. There has to be a period of time, and that period can depend on you and your circumstances and how long you've been dieting and all the things, but there has to be a period of time where we are solely focused on improving our health and eating food, eating at maintenance. And that is scary for some people because if they've been trying to diet for a long time and they just want to be smaller and they feel like crap, they don't like how they look in their body, it's scary for them to try to intentionally eat more, eat at maintenance because they're worried they're going to gain weight. But that time is necessary because you have to heal your body from the inside out before you start noticing those changes on the outside. Or else the same thing's going to happen again. And as coaches, it's our job to set people up for long-term success and not just be like, hey, all right, sure, I'm going to put you in a deficit. It's going to suck. You're going to feel awful. You're going to be so tired. You're going to have no sex drive, all the things. You might lose a couple pounds, but then you're going to go on your way and you're going to gain it right back, and I feel like as people who truly want the best for our clients in the long term, like we want to see them thrive, not just while they're working with us, but beyond. We just can't do that with a good conscience,
And you think about what is the trajectory of like this sort of like health phase versus like aesthetics phase in the coaching, sphere. And I think about some of my most successful clients who really bought into I know I need to do something different. Because by the time a lot of people come to me, they know that what they're doing is not working. And so they're willing to just do whatever it is, even if it sounds completely insane or counterintuitive to what they've believed for their entire life. Is if people can give me 4 to 6 months of not stressing about the number on the scale, I can then subsequently put them through fat loss for the subsequent next 6 to 12 months. And now we're talking 20 to 40 pounds of fat loss that they didn't have to fill them.
Yeah. And then they can keep it off and then they can be done.
And they keep it off. Oh yeah. It's incredible because it's like, and I've got one client specifically in my head right now. We had our call yesterday and she's going into her second fat loss. She spent just the first 6 months really just dialing in her health. During that time, she did lose about 5 to 7 pounds, but we weren't really trying to lose weight. And then we did her first deficit. She lost 20 pounds in 5 months and then went back up to maintenance and she maintained every single pound loss.
Love it.
She's been at maintenance for 4 months, maybe 5. Now we're going into her next fat loss phase. And I did tell her, you're probably not going to lose another 20 pounds. We're looking at maybe 10 to 12, realistically for her body count. And she's like, that's totally fine. But the fact that she was able to commit to her health, then lose 20 pounds, at like 1,700 calories intake daily. It was incredible. And not, we didn't have to do any calorie drops, which I loved. I love it when I don't have to do that.
Oh, yes.
And then she maintained it through the holiday trips, through traveling, through social events. And now she's like, yeah, I'm ready to, let's try to dig a little bit more. I'm like, game, we got this. And because she's taken so good care of her body is going to be much more responsive again to another fat loss. It's not maybe as severe as extreme as the first one. The first one could even be considered extreme. But some people can't imagine actually losing the 20 pounds. It seems impossible to them because they feel it.
Yeah.
And you've probably had a similar trajectory with some clients where it's like, if they can just give you like give me like 3, 4, 5 months of not micromanaging your body size. I can give you so much more in return.
Yeah.
And those are the people that see this.
Yeah.
And they're so much healthier in turn.
Yeah. That's when we have to sometimes have those conversations too about removing the scales. Like if we're on every check-in, we're going to be sad that we didn't lose weight yet or haven't lost as much weight as you thought. Like we need to remove that as a metric altogether because that's not the current focus. Like it's not. I mean, you have to know that. And that's something that I talk to my clients when I bring them on. But I get it also because you feel like you're measuring all these things and we're just ingrained to think if I'm doing XYZ and I'm being consistent, I should see a drop on the scale. And so when people don't, it's that immediate like, oh. So it's like if we can't detach ourselves from that number, then we just have to usually remove it altogether.
Yeah, and I love that. And then using different metrics like measurements and photos. But and you'll probably attest to this too, is your dream body, whatever that means to whoever is out there. I think we all have in our head a little bit of like what we want to look like, what we want to feel, what size pant we want to wear, or whatever. Your dream body is probably a lot heavier than you think it is.
Yeah.
Like on the scale specifically, because if you're adding lean tissue, you're doing body recomposition, and you're following through and taking care of your body first before worrying about what the number on the scale says, you're going to add that lean tissue, that density, right? You're going to look different, but you're probably going to be a lot heavier than you think you're going to be.
Yeah.
So, which is wild to me. Like, I never thought I'd feel fantastic and weighing over 150 pounds. Like, that was wild to me. But like, it is what it is. And I'm not so much concerned that, oh, that's the number on the scale. I'm just like, huh, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting metric.
Yeah.
But don't be afraid to be heavier, because heavy doesn't necessarily equate to what your body is going to look like at the end of the journey.
1,000%. Yeah. I remember a while back I put a like poll on one of my stories, and I was basically explaining something similar. And I was like, would you rather be at your goal weight or be at your goal body? Like have your goal body. And like everybody, 100% of people said goal body. But then when we get into it, actually, it's like we still have trouble detaching that from the number on a scale. But then when it's really cool when clients start to see that body composition change, and they're like, yeah, maybe they lost a few pounds. They're like, oh my gosh, like I've only lost 10 pounds, but looks like I've lost 25 pounds because like my body just looks so much different. And that's the cool thing, is when you can see like that light bulb moment for them, and you're like, all right, like you're getting it. Like the number is not everything, so.
And
Nice.
then another nugget too for anybody who's on this journey, and this goes for whatever the end goal is. Don't hyperfixate so much on the end goal.
Listen.
Learn to focus on the process. Make the behaviors and changing the behaviors the win. Because the behaviors are what's going to help you maintain it once you get to wherever it is that you're going. And you have to feel confident in doing that. Like I love it. We had this conversation the other day. I think when we get a client and we've worked with them for maybe a year and a half, and they're like, they've been maintaining, they've been rocking things, and they feel so confident to like graduate coaching, and they're so excited because they have that self-trust and the knowledge to take care of themselves in a way that they never did before. Like,
yeah, it's the best feeling. Like you hate to let them go because you're like, I love working with this person. And you're like, I am so happy because I know that you've pretty much learned everything that I could teach you. And you've been practicing it. You've been maintaining all these things. And like, I'm excited to see you go out like without the weekly accountability and support, and just like crush it on your own, because I have full trust that you can do that. So that is really cool. It's
like we did our job.
It's like we did our job. Yeah.
We did it.
We did it. Yes. Nice. Well, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah. I mean, it's just I love what we do. I love this industry. I love working with people. And you get it, And if you're another coach out there who's also maybe tuning into Lindsay's podcast, you get it. And for people that are working with coaches, your coaches want you to succeed so badly, and sometimes it means we're going to tell you things that you don't want to hear, but we do it because we love you.
We do it because we love you. It truly does. I tell when I have like new clients coming on, and I'm like, we are going to talk a lot. Like I become, very close with many of my clients because of the amount of communication and the things that they tell you, things are going on in their lives and things like that. And it's a very cool bond. You do have to be vulnerable sometimes because we can't read minds and things like that. But I think it's a very cool relationship, and that you can continue to carry, for the rest of, your life. Like I've had clients like, oh, what's going to happen now? Like I'm offboarding, like, we don't get to talk anymore. And I'm like, no, like I'm gonna be checking in on you on social media, like sending updates, like things like that. So That's very cool. But Elena, thank you so much for coming. I truly appreciate you. I think it's been a great discussion. I think we left on a good note because we ended on a good note because I think that's something that I try so much to explain is like, you know, basically kind of what you just ended up there with. And I'm like, it's so nice to hear another coach say that too, because it's not just me, guys. Like it's we all want you, we want the best for you. We can't want it more than you do, but we want the best for you. And sometimes we gotta have those hard conversations. It's not because we don't want you to enjoy your life, it's because we want you to enjoy more of your life in the future. Um, but tell us where we can find you and all the things.
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram at elena.m.fit. I'm sure Lindsay will link in the show notes my Instagram, and that's the main place where I hang out. I also have a TikTok, which I check intermittently because TikTok's a black hole.
Same.
And then I have my podcast, What the Funk, where I kind of talk about more of these like high level issues that we kind of touched on today. So if you're interested in diving more on some of that, there's a whole mess of shit over there. And then I'm on YouTube. So my YouTube channel is called Dump Your Diet, and I cross post the podcast over to the YouTube channels.
Love that.
The YouTube channel for those types of things that is now up and running. But that's where I'm at.
Very cool.
It's been so fun. This has been a great conversation, Dave. So thank you for having me on, and hopefully the audience, guys enjoyed my unhinged thoughts. Okay.
We love her unhinged thoughts. Yep. Everybody go check out Elena's Instagram. She's great. She has tons of great information. Her podcast is amazing. I listen to it all the time. Didn't know you had a YouTube, so I definitely have to check that out. But yeah, thank you again for coming and we'll chat soon. Bye.